Hello, lovely people. My name is Wizo from Level Up Corner, and today we are going to talk about D&D mysteries and how to properly make a mystery. Now, I will have a full article on how to make mysteries in the description down below, so I would suggest you check that out after this video because it'll have a bit more information than what I can give you in just one single video. Now, on to mysteries. First, we have to think of what are mysteries. And really, the answer is kind of surprising. All they are just multi-tiered puzzles. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mysteries and puzzles are quite different, aren't they? Well, not really. I mean, think of it this way. What is a puzzle? Well, a puzzle is where your players get information and have to solve a riddle or an intellectual challenge. Okay, cool. But what is a mystery? Well, a mystery is where your players get information or clues and they end up solving piece by piece the entire mystery or puzzle. So a mystery is just a multi-layered puzzle. Now, it could be that your players have to figure out multiple things or that there are actual multiple puzzles in the mystery, but really, mysteries are just an extension of puzzles. If you are interested in how to make puzzles work, I would highly suggest that you check out the article about puzzles in the description down below. But on to the topic. What do you need to learn about making a mystery? Well, the first thing that you need to do is that you need to be detailed. Now, what do I mean by detailed? Well, think of it this way. If your players enter a town and the mayor has called for them, and they enter the mayor's room and the mayor says, "A person's been murdered. We need to have you figure out who the culprit is." I mean, that doesn't give the players much to work off of. In fact, they'll ask the mayor a few questions right away of just who was it or basic information. Now, if they walk in, the mayor turns around, "Adventurers, Tabitha Ruthcliffe has been murdered in our town brutally, in her own home when the doors are locked and no one has come in or out of town in months. Can you help us solve this murder?" Right there, the mayor just gave a ton of information. He gave the information that the victim's name is first, Tabitha. Okay, good to go off of, so they actually know who got murdered, which would avoid the basic question of, well, who got murdered? It's pretty simple, saving yourself some time. But then you go into giving them details that she was brutally murdered. Okay, that means that it's probably not a professional. It might be just an amateur or someone who had revenge, something else that narrows it down, gives your players a little bit to work with, or at least feel like they have something to work off of. You then go into that her entire house was locked and no one's entered. Well, this adds another layer to the mystery. How did a person die brutally in their own home without there being any signs of intrusion? Was it someone who had a key? Was it someone that she trusted? Makes the players actually go and figure out who Tabitha trusted. Or maybe Tabitha's place had a secret entrance. And if she had a secret entrance, who else would know about it and why? You're adding all these layers that players can just think of right then and there by giving a little bit of detail, which is extraordinarily important. You also need to do this with your clues. So for example, if they find a clue that's a muddy boot print, okay, that could be anyone. I mean, a muddy boot print at the scene of the crime doesn't give much. But if you state that it is a small muddy boot print, now the players know to potentially look for maybe someone who's smaller in frame. It could be more than likely a female, but it could be a male or it could be a child. There's a lot of things that adds layers to it. And just because I added that detail, a small boot print in the mud, made it so that your players have something to go off of. This makes it so that your players will be able to figure things out. Because a problem that we have when designing mysteries, well, most Dungeon Masters do, is that when we design mysteries, we forget that players can't read our minds sometimes. So a lot of Dungeon Masters fall into the trap of, oh, why can't they figure that out? And then it just bars content. It makes it so your players can't continue. And in my puzzle article, I go into kind of what happens if you have obstacle barring puzzles. So we need to figure out ways around this. But before we figure out ways around this, we need to figure out what can't be changed, what needs to be set in stone for your players and for the mystery to actually be successful. The main thing is that you need to never change are the premise. Pretty obvious, I know, but the one thing that's least likely to change out of any point in the mystery is the premise, how people get into the mystery, or how your players are introduced. The premise needs to be extremely detailed so the players feel like they have something to go off of. Again, if all the information they got was that someone was murdered, I mean, what are they going to do? They don't know anything else about this person unless they're very inquisitive. If they got all that information that I gave, then they're able to do more. You get the idea on the premise. The next thing that needs to be set in stone and not changed is your clues. Now, if you start changing your clues halfway through, then your players can come to the wrong conclusion. You should have enough clues layered in order to make your players not be completely confused. So we'll go into that in a second. But your clues should not change. They can be repurposed, but not change. The last thing that you cannot change in your story is the ending. If you change the ending, there can be an issue with some of the clues where your players think, well, what was the point of those clues? They didn't lead us anywhere. And your players would be right. Because those clues were not meant to lead them anywhere. Those clues that you had before were meant for a completely different ending. And changing the ending after all your foreshadowing and key points have been set is a terrible idea. Changing the ending is something that you do not want to do and must avoid at all costs. If your players guess the ending, like, oh, well, maybe it's this person, that's great. Doesn't mean they've completely solved the mystery because they need to have enough evidence. There could also be a whole bunch of twists. If the players have gotten that far to where they know what the ending is before the thought of time at least, then you could have the person who murdered someone or the person who is in charge of this mystery decide to start to throw off the players. Maybe they start leading false clues. Maybe they start having the players doubt themselves. Maybe they could have their accomplices do something. There could be a whole slew of things that you can do in order to make it so that even if your players find out the ending, that's not technically the ending. Now, how to repurpose content appropriately. Sometimes players just don't get things. Sometimes players can go to a location, have a discussion on which is actually better, divine magic or arcane magic, and then leave the scene thinking that, oh, we investigated that already, and they didn't actually investigate anything. Well, you need to be able to figure out how to repurpose some of that content. For example, let's go back to that muddy blueprint example. Let's say that in the blacksmith, they were supposed to find this muddy blueprint, or this muddy footprint. But when they don't find this muddy blueprint, they get a little confused. They don't know who to search for. So you have a clue that leads them to the perpetrator's house. They go to the perpetrator's house and they find the small muddy blueprint at that house. Shock, I know, but it could be something that actually helps them connect things. And you can repurpose a few clues. Now, a muddy blueprint might not be good because it might be situational, but if you have, let's say, the murder weapon, well, I mean, the murder weapon's pretty easy to repurpose. Instead of in the blacksmith's area or behind a bush or whatever, it could be in a trash can. I mean, it could be almost anywhere so that the players could find it. And you can make it seem like, if you need to, that the whole town's incompetent by putting it in a trash can. But hey, it's doable. It's your game. You can find a way to repurpose some of these clues. Just try to not change your clues. Repurpose where they are, but don't change them. Now, repurposing your clues is a sort of last-ditch effort to try to keep the mystery alive. What's much better than repurposing your clues is making it so that your players will find the clues in the first place. I know, it seems pretty easy, but what if they do have that conversation? What if they do have that debate about arcane or divine magic and then walk away? Well, instead of just reminding them as a dungeon master, hey, you didn't actually search that area, because they might be convinced that they did and not go back no matter what you say. Well, what you can also do is you can springboard your locations. Your players, when they get their information, have 3 places to go to, A, B, or C. From the Tabitha idea, they could go to Tabitha's friends, which could be A. They could go to Tabitha's house, which could be B. Or they could go to the last place Tabitha was before the murder, which is C. Let's just say these 3 points. In location A, you want to try to springboard the clues. So they could find a clue in location A that's vital to the investigation, but it can also point towards location B and location C. This way, if they miss something in location A and go to location C, then location C will tell them, hey, there's a different clue in location A and there's a clue in location B. They'll figure it out. Oh, maybe we should go to location B. And if you give a good enough hint, if you just make it so that your players can figure out, oh, we missed something in location A, they can go back and they can figure it out. They can talk to those friends of Tabitha and they can ask, hey, well, did Tabitha have a jealous boyfriend recently? Oh yeah, well, she had, and then they go into this whole thing about it. So you want to try to have locations connect to each other. Now why I said they go to location C after location A is because locations do not have to be done in order, or at least they shouldn't be designed that way. If you design locations to be in order, it is essentially obstacle barring puzzles or obstacle puzzles. And if you read that article down below about puzzles, you know that barring content is not good. You don't want to bar content from your players and assume that they'll find this clue and then go to this clue and then go to this clue, because what if they don't find the second clue? They can't progress to the third, they can't continue the story, it's just terrible. You need to make it so that the locations are flexible, so that they can point to each other, but so that players don't have to go A, B, C. Instead, they could, if they want, go A, C, and then B to get all their information. And then if you really want, you can progress to the next phase. And the next phase could be the climax of that phase, or it could be a minor encounter, minor climax, minor plot twist, or whatever else that then leads to another phase. I talk about phases a bit more in my article down below on mysteries. I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but you should probably check out the puzzles and mystery articles. Something that's not in those articles, giving you something new, is that when you make a mystery, if you make a mystery campaign that might span a few levels or do more than just a little session or a minor plot point, if you do a mystery campaign, you need to keep the mystery going. And that's going to happen for other mysteries in your campaigns as well. I remember that a person interviewed J.R.R. Tolkien, and they asked for him to reveal some information in Lord of the Rings, that, oh, well, what happened to the Vanir or whatever else? And then J.R.R. Tolkien responded, paraphrasing of course, that if he revealed what was beyond those hills, he would need to create mountains in order to keep people interested and to keep their curiosity. So if people knew it was beyond the hills, he would need to create mountains. That's what you'll need to do in your mystery. A good mystery campaign, or string of mysteries, makes it so that while people get some information revealed to them, it still leads to more questions. Some things aren't right. It might lead to the idea that, oh yeah, we have everything solved, that's great. And then they think, wait, there was that inconsistency, and that inconsistency, and that, we know that's not right. That's not how it actually works. So you can lead them along to where they have to solve a new mystery constantly. This is a bit more strenuous and tedious, but this is what you want if you want a mystery campaign or multiple mysteries, right? You want them to keep trying to solve these mysteries. And this is just basically a whole bunch of extra phases that you're doing. That is the basic premise on how you create a good mystery in D&D. All they are is just expanded puzzles, and really, you need to make sure that you have enough detail for your players and enough ways so that your players can understand what to do next. Because if you don't, players will get frustrated and just give up. I mean, why bother? It's too confusing. Too confusing. But again, if you want to learn more, one last time, check out the puzzles and mystery article down in the link below. This has been Wizo, and keep rolling.